Hey, Richard.
Hello there. Hang on one second. Let me get my earbuds in here. There we go. Okay. Shit. There we go. All right. Whoops, wrong one. That's this one. There we go. All right. Let's pull this in and testing one. There we go. All set. All set. All set. All right. Let's see. I don't have that up, so that's what I want. Okay. Let's do this. Right. This. And there it is. All right. Okay. Well, I think we are ready to go at this end if you're at your end.
Okay.
So there we go. Put that there. So let me close this door 1 second. All right, there we go. Oh my God.
Yeah, what's going on?
Oh, just tired. The dog was restless all night. Not that he was in pain.
I know how that is.
Oh, and you know, it's like, why are you so damn restless? He wasn't in pain. He wasn't hurting. I don't know what the problem was, but thank God today's a half day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I'm out of here at noon. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here.
What do you do with your time off? Do you just work some more?
That's about the size of it. Yes,
I know.
Unfortunately. I do actually try to find the time to just, relax a little bit and not do anything if I can help it. But, there's stuff to be done around the house and, the various tasks that your cat box is emptied, the chicken coop's got to be cleaned out and the yard's got to be picked up for the dog. And, it's one of those.
So, Richard, can you hear me on this mic?
I don't think so. No. I mean, I hear you. Now that's a stupid answer to a good question. I hear you, but not well.
Okay, what about now?
That's much better.
Okay. So I don't know what's wrong with these headphones, but they were expensive and I don't think they work very well.
Well, sometimes you can spend a lot of money on something and end up just spending a lot of money on something. You know what I mean?
I do.
Okay. So, all right, let's go ahead and roll this and I will begin. I'll just count you down like we normally do in a recorded program. All right.
So I'm going to ask for you to participate.
I will be right here.
Okay.
Okay. Lie. I lie a lot. Okay, here we go. Stand by. In 3, 2, wait a minute, 1.
Hello, Santa Barbara. It's your chantress of everything valuable and beautiful, Elizabeth Stewart. And today we're going to talk a little bit about an important topic, which is called spring cleaning. my clients have been asking me, what are we gonna do now? It's spring cleaning time. We want to get rid of some things. And so the title of today's talk, and I'm gonna ask Richard a few questions so that, we we can really investigate what's in his house. But the talk is called Working from Home, Working with Home. And what we're going to be doing is discussing a systematic way to approach your objects. I mean, we've got two things to celebrate. The COVID thing is looking better each day. And so we want to purge a little bit. And also, it is springtime, and that's a traditional time to sort of get rid of some things and redo, reclean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Traditional in a lot of religions for springtime to be that time.
Yeah.
So Richard, so now I asked you before we started the show, what do you do in your time off? And you mentioned a couple of things that were about cleaning up around your property up there on the ranch. So let's say you're doing spring cleaning, you and your wife, and Amrita says, Richard, I'm going to have some help around the house, in the house. What do you tackle?
Literally anything and everything that I know that I can. Seriously, no. I'm not going to handle now. If we're talking spring cleaning, of course, we're not talking maintenance on the property like electrical or plumbing or things of this nature, which are out of my wheelhouse. I loved one. Someone said the other day, yeah, I went to look in my wheelhouse and there was nothing there. But in my case, I got a lot. But no, I will. For example, with the newly acquired greenhouse, I will help her in any way I can there to help either A, water, B, dig a hole for something. We'll put up a birdhouse and I have to put a hole in the ground to put the post and all of that stuff. We had a huge branch break off of the oak tree that's just outside our house there. Wasn't in any danger of hitting the house. And so I had to go through the process of cutting the limb apart just so I could repair the fence that it had crushed. And then I began the process of cutting it up even smaller for firewood and those kinds of things. If, for example, I'm going to say 2 months ago that we decided, or it was more me, and she said, okay, sure, we need to clean out the storage area under the house. The house is built on a hill. And the back of the house, where the 2 bedrooms and bathroom are on ground level. But the front of the house, where there's a porch, is what would be considered split level. I mean, you have to duck down to get into this crawl space.
Got it.
And it's layered with concrete. And anyway, we pulled everything out of there. And of course, we found that the rodents had been living there. So there was a lot of major cleanup and sanitizing and those kinds of things. And then we went through each of the boxes, each of the containers, to see what it was that we wanted to keep. And it's just really very interesting how that process is undertaken. And I really have to say that in the process that we went through with that, and that was part of this.
What did you keep?
Well, first of all, I had containers, very large containers of, hang on one second here, very large containers of, what do you call it? Dad, burn it. I can't even remember what the heck I call it. Of books.
Oh, yes.
Lots and lots of books. And I didn't get rid of any of them, which was fine. I didn't necessarily want to get rid of any of them, but we did basically go through the process of getting things organized under the house. I moved the boxes or containers of moved those containers. I moved them into another shed out from under the crawl space so that the rodents couldn't get to the things. And then I basically went through the process of, that was relocation. That was basically what that was. I was relocating to a better place. And we got rid of a bed, the bed of the truck. I filled it, I think, twice. Had to take it down to the dump twice to get rid of a bunch of junk. But a lot of the stuff that we kept was old. She has a very old foot locker with a bunch of things in it that fortunately were not contaminated by the rodents. Again, my boxes of books. We had a box of these lantern glasses, the glass that you put over the top of the lantern, kerosene lanterns. I think we may have either gotten rid of those, or there's a place on the property, or I shouldn't say on the property. There's a place off the property that you can just leave stuff. And if somebody wants it, they will pick it up. Know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's kind of like what people do here in Santa Barbara, right? It's kind of what they do in Santa Barbara, where they will get rid of stuff by just putting it out on the curb.
Yes.
And of course,
okay. So
things look pretty bad.
So let me dissect what you're telling me. First of all, you started by saying that you pulled stuff out that you hadn't seen in a couple of years. So, you approached the problem.
Yeah.
And then you sorted through what you wanted to actually keep and what you wanted to put in the back of the truck and haul off to the dump.
Exactly.
And then you moved stuff to another storage location. And there's the problem right there. Because my suggestion is that you should probably only move stuff once. And, because if you move it to another location, then it's in another location, and you got to kind of go through this whole process next spring, Richard, unfortunately. So,
I get you. Yeah, I do get you on that.
Yeah. So move stuff once. And the problem is that stuff expands to fill whatever, container it's in. It seems to grow.
Yeah.
So,
it does.
It's exponential. So, I think that this is what I want to talk about today, which is how to get a handle on that in a method that involves technology, and a method that I think, during the pandemic, we've all been very reliant. You and I are speaking on Zoom. We used to share the studio together.
Yeah.
So, we can use this technology to actually help in our spring cleaning. And I think that's the point of what I want to talk about today. How do you do that? So my thought to you, Richard, would be, so you're approaching, the underbelly of the house. Perhaps, in regards to books, I know you've got your treasured books, and you told me you don't want to throw any of them out. You don't want to donate any of them. So how about if you did a inventory on your phone, a video on your phone of the titles that, these are the titles that I really like and I really want to keep in my library. I'm suggesting you create a virtual library. So, just shoot the spines, for example, of all the titles that are in the books, in the boxes. And that way there, you've always got a reference of, where your books are. And then you put them in enclosed containers, and you can store them in one place.
Yeah.
Reference that file.
I will tell you, in terms of books, and this was before we moved here to Santa Barbara from Phoenix. I had the same issue, because even when I was there in Phoenix, I was getting books like nobody's business. What did they think I was? A library? Anyway, I was interviewing people. Yeah, I was interviewing people, and they would send me the books. But what I did was I went through them all, and I decided which ones I wanted to keep and which ones I wanted to get rid of. And fortunately, the pile of keeps was smaller than the pile of get rid ofs. And there were used bookstores that would actually buy them because they were in pristine condition. Because, you get these brand new books from the authors, from the publishers. And I probably raked in a couple $300 just from these books alone. And again, I may have only gotten 50 or 75 or 100 or $1 or $5 or whatever for some of these books. But again, I had so many of them. I had hundreds of books. It all added up. So that was another way to literally not just get rid of the books, but also to pass them on.
Yeah.
because I really
Understood. So,
don't feel comfortable just throwing them in
no,
the trash bin.
no, that's a sin. You can't throw books away. But here's the suggestion. So let's break that down into value categories.
Yes. Okay.
I'm an appraiser. So what do you do with the books that you want to sell, for example? So there's a couple of resources out there online, for example. So Richard took some books to the used bookstore. Yes, that's one idea. But let's say you have another tier of value on top of that. You've got some rarer books. I would suggest to our listeners that they try a site called Abe, like Honest Abe, ABE Books.
Mm-hmm.
And Abe Books is a service where you can post a book that's a rarer title or a first edition. It's a very competitive marketplace. And Abe Books is a great resource. Ad Libris is another site that does that same.
Mm-hmm.
So there's opportunities to actually make money off of some of the books that you do have, Richard, if you've got the higher tier of value.
Yeah.
Likewise, I know from the past, we've spoken about this before, that you have a lot of records, old LPs.
Yeah.
And so what do you do with those? Well, there's a couple of really interesting people that have sprung up during the pandemic in Santa Barbara that do buy and sell records. That wasn't a case before the pandemic, but everything's been, there's such churn and it's gone into technology that we've got some great opportunities for selling things like records.
Oh, yeah.
You're giving me the sign we got to go to a quick break. Okay, so reintroducing myself and Richard, we're talking about spring cleaning, working with home, working from home, and how we're going to attack the house this spring and get it all ready for, what do you call it, our recovery. Don't turn that down.
Absolutely. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart, and I'm speaking with Richard Dugan about, his branch and how he's approaching his spring cleaning. He and his wife, Rita, with a little bit of interjection of, maybe you could try this, maybe you could try that. And before we went to break, we were talking about avenues for selling books.
Right.
And we were talking about the value levels. So you've got your used books, your paperbacks, those are not worth that much in general, but you've got your hardcovers and then you've got your rare books on top of that. So the hardcovers, how do you determine what is a book of value, which is hardcover? So here's the golden rule with books, Richard. A book that is rare is one that you probably haven't heard of. I mean, all of your Dan Browns, in the world, that they're not going to actually make you any money at all in the resale. But the ones that are really strange, that you really haven't heard of, that are really outliers, those are the titles to look for. And of course, you can do a Google search on Abe, ABE Books, and find out, more about the book, because the various editions actually matter. So the printings matter as far as value is concerned. And then you can post them on Abe Books or at Libris and, make some money off of the books. It's a different way than selling to a bookstore owner, because a bookstore owner has to resell. So he's buying it about half. And if you're going online and you're selling yourself, you're in a different marketplace. The consignment percentage is a lot lower, and there's not that threat of getting sort of taken for a ride if you do have a rare first edition.
Yeah.
And, how do you tell if it's a first edition? Well, that's another hard one too, because by nature of the publication process, first edition books are not usually stating first edition, because how does the publishing house or the author know it's going to go into second, third, fourth edition? So usually a first edition doesn't actually state that on the frontispiece, which is the cover sheet, which states the edition, place, location, publisher, etc. So that's your books covered, Richard. That's how you're gonna weed through them. I want to also talk about home inventory. And using technology, we mentioned, you had me out one time to the ranch, and I noticed you had a Waterford collection and you had Symbolique.
Mhm.
which, any Irish person would have in their house. Now, how do you inventory that? How do you know what you have, Richard?
Well, honestly, we don't. I mean, it's there, it's in the China hutch, and that's where we know where it is and what it is. We haven't done any of that kind of, whether it be a written or digital or video. We haven't
Yeah.
done that. So
So,
we lose it. We have no proof for the
yeah,
insurance company.
right. And there's those two questions. There's the insurance question that you're referring to, but the other question is, let's say that, you both of you are older and you're thinking about leaving these things to heirs. Who would you leave that to? Who would you leave the Waterford and the Believe
Oh
to?
my gosh. You know, um, I could, because she doesn't really have that many relatives left. She only has one sister. All of her other siblings and parents have passed. She does have some nieces and nephews, so she might leave it to them, which would take a little, some searching, but not much. I don't know that we would leave any of it to my brother or sisters necessarily. But I guess that's something we haven't decided, we haven't talked about.
Right. So, as we're doing the spring cleaning this season, you might want to discuss with Rita, do we want to leave this to a relative, or should we put in our will, for example, that this valuable collection go to a specific charity, for example? Because in a will, you can put that kind of specific language. So, that's a thought. But then we want to return to this idea of insurance. So, you want to insure that, and you want to prove that you have it. So part of what I'm going to suggest is this inventory method. And I think everybody this season should probably take out just, your dumb old smartphone, take that, put it on video, and make a tour make a tour of your china closet, Richard.
Yeah.
Look at the Belique, look at the Waterford, and mention, I have X number of stems of Lismore, I have this, I have that, and you're going through and you're recording your inventory, and then you put that in a safe place, your inventory, and you also might say on the inventory the reason that you think it's worth thinking about. In other words, we picked the Lismore up when we were in Ireland. It was 2008, for example. We were visiting such and such a friend, and give the backstory a little bit. Why that's important, Richard, is because first of all, it's speaking to provenance, from whence it came. And let's say you did decide to leave the Waterford and the Belique to Rita's sister. Well, if she would just get a box of that stuff in the mail, she would probably think, well, what the heck is this? But if she knew the story that her dear sister actually collected this in Ireland, et cetera, it might mean something. That narrative might mean something, as an attachment to the objects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, that's a way to think about the inventory, Richard.
I had a friend who passed a couple of years ago, and she had already shared with me that she was going to, every time she'd bring it up, she'd say, that's if you want them. That's if you want them. She bequeathed to me in her will hundreds, maybe 400 or 500 cassette tapes of interviews that she had conducted or had been in other words, she was not just the host, she was the guest in some tapes, she was the host in others, from her career. And we're talking about going back to the late 70s, early 80s into the 90s and possibly 2000s. And of course,
she was a broadcaster.
She was an entertainer. She was my acting coach. I even had her on my program once. She did a particular form of analysis where she would analyze your face, and she could tell you. It's kind of like someone doing a palm reading, but she could look at your face, and she knew by the various characteristics of the crook of your nose, or the slant of your eyes, or the way your lips would go one way or the other, or your cheekbones, and so on and so forth, or the ridges or wrinkles, if you will, furrow lines in your forehead, if you frown a lot. she would talk about those things. And so she basically told me a number of times through our conversations before her passing that she was going to give those to me. And again, she always said, yeah, that's if you want them and you can do whatever you want with them. Well, most of the people she'd interviewed have already passed on. And she says, you could always take my voice out and put yours in. And I'm going, I don't, first of all, that's a little disingenuous. And second of all, how in the world would I have ever gotten an opportunity to interview any of these people? I would rather have her voice in there interviewing these people. But
Okay,
that is
so what did
something
you do with those? So
I still
you
have them.
inherited-
I'm transferring them to the computer. I'm putting them up on my
Okay.
SoundCloud account in a special playlist that one of these days, once I have transferred the majority of them, I'm going to make it public. And then I'm going to promote that on my website so that people can
Okay,
go
so
and listen
then
to
what
those
are you
great
going to-
interviews.
What are you going to do with the cassettes once you've downloaded the information?
Oh, wow.
Mm.
That is a really good question, along with all of the reel-to-reels I've acquired over the years. I mean, I've got several hundred of those that I have collected. I've produced stuff on them. I've got reels of commercials as well as programs. And matter of fact, the very first feature I ever did was called In Depth Today. I was a young man of 21, 22 maybe, and I was asked by the news director to record these. We'd rip the AP copy, and then the feature was entitled In Depth Today, and I would then have to read it. And that was one of those times, that was in a time when you had to read it straight through correctly. You couldn't go back and edit it because of the way we were recording it. So that was a challenge, but I don't know I don't know where I would send all this stuff or what would happen.
I'm going to make a suggestion to you. So now
Please.
if you've got recordings on the old method, old technology, so you've
Analog.
got cassettes, you've got,
reels and
reel
vinyl.
to reel. So my suggestion is that there's repositories for that sort of thing. I mean, the Smithsonian is one of them, the specific archive for, it's a sort of tell me your story archive. It's separated into various departments. There's a department for the veterans to tell their stories. There's a department for, the news people or archive their stories, et cetera. So, this is something where you're thinking ahead as you're spring cleaning. You're thinking, okay, this is a valuable point in time.
Yeah.
So if you could think about a collection like that in terms of cultural relevance, it's a snapshot of a person, yes, but it's also a snapshot in a certain technique, like you're saying, face analysis. And it's a snapshot of a way of presenting. It's a snapshot of technology, et cetera, et cetera. So, we're thinking in terms of what would this look like in 20 years? Would it make an interesting study or dissertation, for example?
That would be interesting.
Yeah. So you want to put that in some kind of an archive location outside of your own archive. And, think of what you can do. And I'll tell you, when we get back from the break, a sort of a heartwarming story, about a client that had this sort of an issue. I have a lot of old uniforms, military uniforms from my relatives, First World War, Second World War. The heck do I do with those? They're just going to mothballs, in the storage. My suggestion was, take a look down at the Veterans Hall here, in Santa Barbara, see if they want those things. And then, then the Naval Museum in Annapolis, for example, ended up taking a number of those things. And lo and behold, they put one of the uniforms up on a display and invited the old gentleman to come and see his old uniform. This was a wonderful way to actually not just say, okay, here you go, give it to the Goodwill, but to kind of be very specific with what you have and how it can actually be looked at by future generations.
Well, I'll tell you before we go to break here, remind what you were saying about the reels and the cassettes and so forth. There was a wonderful line in the one-man play of Give 'Em Hell, Harry, portrayed by James Whitmore, where Harry is basically telling the story of how he walked into the living room one day, and he saw Bess sitting on the floor in front of the fireplace when the fire was going. And she had this large box with all of the love letters that he had written to her. And she was tossing them one by one into the fireplace.
Oh,
And of course, Harry says, well, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm burning all these old letters. And he says, well, think of posterity. And she says, I am, and kept right on throwing them into the fireplace. So with that, we can go to break.
okay.
All right, here we go. Number 3 in 3, 2, 1.
So Richard, we're talking today about spring cleaning, and couldn't happen in a more interesting time in the world history. So, every spring folks, my clients ask me questions about, what am I going to do with my valuable things? And the question usually is phrased in a really interesting way, which is, Elizabeth, I want to really talk to you about my valuable things. I want to know what they're worth. I want that to be known to both insurance company and my heirs, etc. So how do we start the process? And I said, well, have you started to think about what's valuable in your home? The comment I usually get, Richard, is, well, I've thought about it, but there's so much small stuff that isn't valuable that's cluttering up the space that I have to get rid of the small stuff before I can think of the valuable, more interesting stuff. My answer to that is forget about the small stuff. Because the smaller the object, the greater the psychic space it takes up. And I mean smaller, not by size, but significance, etc. The little tchotchkes of life, they take up so much psychic space because they become exponential. So my suggestion is don't think about that. And how you start this is you say, okay, I'm going to devote Saturday and Sunday this weekend, and I'm going to do an inventory. And so you take your phone and you do an inventory. Instead of worrying about the junk drawer in the kitchen, just simply shoot it and just say junk drawer, kitchen. Now move on. Because the thing is that eventually that small stuff something will happen to it. In other words, either you'll pass from this planet and your kids will have to deal with it, or you'll get motivated to do something with the small stuff. But my suggestion is start with the big stuff. So the things of greatest value in your home, both emotionally, narratively, value-wise, start with those things and inventory those first. So your inventory would look like this, Richard. It would be, okay, first we're going to start with the things that my wife and I really think are fairly precious. And you're going to narrate those. You're going to head that experience. The title of that inventory is going to be the most important things in the house. And you're going to do that first. And you're going to talk about the things that matter and what dollar figure you think they may be. And you're also going to mention, really importantly, the backstory. This was inherited from my grandfather, my great-grandfather, who came over from Ireland, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to talk about the backstory. And the reason that you start with the most valuable things first is because the research that you're going to do next on those valuable things, once you've got them captured on your inventory, now you're going to actually pull maybe 3 things down and research those. What you learn by researching something of value, both, like I said, emotionally, narratively, and value-wise, what you learn from that is going to be so much more meatier, I guess is a word, than any kind of small little egg beater that you find in the kitchen junk drawer. You're going to actually learn much more about the society of the time, the culture of the time. It's much more enriching experience to actually sit down and think about your better stuff. The small stuff, let that go for another day, because you start with the best and you'll actually have a good time doing it. Start with the small stuff and you'll be like, okay, where's the wine? I'm over this. I'm finished with this. So, start with the good stuff first. You can actually do a whole separate inventory of the stuff that you don't really want to keep. And what you do with that is you send that to your kids or to your heirs or to some friends, and you say, this is now up for grabs. This is my inventory of the stuff I don't really I don't really care that much about. It
Mhm.
doesn't have a backstory for me. And so now I'm going to send this out. You give people maybe 3 weeks to decide what they want. And if
Yeah.
they say to you, oh yeah, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, then you let the rest of it go to charity, for example, to a thrift store.
And I think that's a wonderful idea too, that whatever you do not give to your heirs, whoever they may be, that you find a way to pass it forward, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word pay it forward. That's a little different, but to keep it in circulation, if you will, so that those who can really use it and put it to good use will have it for a much more reasonable price, shall we say, than if they were to buy it brand new. And I know that there's a lot of value too in things that are slightly worn and are still in very good condition.
Let's put it this way. So
yeah.
the emergence of places like Craigslist is testimony to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And the question would be, well, do I bother with posting this on Craigslist with all the foibles involved in Craigslist? You know, you don't necessarily know who's actually looking or who's even showing up.
Right.
So, you know, do I venture down that path, or do I just give it away, et cetera, et cetera? Well, here's my hint for research on whether or not it's worth it. First of all, you think to yourself, you know, I usually charge X number of dollars per hour in my business. So how many hours is this going to take to market this piece, put it up on Craigslist, answer the emails, et cetera, meet these people? If it's going to take more than you think the object is worth, then just give it away. Now, where do you give it? You're saying you and your wife would like to buy it forward. And my suggestion is every neighborhood here in Santa Barbara and many other places, they have their especially during the pandemic. We started this after the fires in many neighborhoods where there's a website that's devoted. So I live on the Upper East. So there's a website for the Upper East. And there's an exchange on that website of objects. And so you're not putting it out to the public. You're actually kind of knowing who's coming to see your things and who might be, you know, buying them in some cases and who you're giving them to in other cases. So you kind of start locally and you think, okay, well, you know, who could I give these things to? Try your local websites before you try your Craigslist, et cetera, because, you know, especially with folks that are in the pandemic right now or living alone, I don't know always if Craigslist is the best method. So I think you're giving us time. We got to go to quick break.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
we're talking today about spring cleaning, and I'm grilling Richard on what he's doing up at the ranch in regards to his spring cleaning. Don't turn that down.
All right. And now we'll do the next segment here.
Give me 2 seconds for
Go ahead.
a refill on the coffee.
You go for it. Okay, that's ready to go. Okay, one more long one. Okay, 35. Well, 5 and 5.
Okay.
All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
So Richard, you know, in your collection of objects, do you have something that you think, or that you feel, I should say, feel's a better word, is your best piece? What piece in your collection is most important to you?
Oh, wow. I'm going to say, and it's primarily because I do carry it around. Actually, there are 2 things. One is a stack of coins literally from around the world that I have just come across. They've just come into my possession. I've just hung on to them for whatever reason. I think I have a yen, a Chinese yen. I certainly have some. I have a sterling, an Irish sterling silver pound. I also have a Kennedy half dollar that is still in its, I thought like a 63 or 64, that I got on in some mailing years ago. I mean, I was probably in my teens when I got it. That is still in the plastic, you know, it's still sealed up and everything. Then the other thing would be a book that I carry with me. And I've mentioned this to folks before. I've actually had to have it rebound so that it holds up a little longer. Called The Impersonal Life by James Benner, written in 1933. Now, the book itself isn't 1933 vintage, but the text is. But I've had it since I was 21. Those two things are probably, those two elements are probably, I would say, probably the most important things that the book probably at the top of before the coins. And I have some euros in there, some euro coins and that kind of thing that who knows, maybe one day I'll pull them out and we'll be able to spend them in Europe. But most
Okay.
everything else in terms of audio is, it's all analog and it, you know, it's not that important.
So let's talk about the coins in the book. So
Okay.
what I'm going to suggest is that folks that are listening out there to think about the two objects that they consider most telling about their experience here on the planet. And what I'm suggesting, Richard, is that you create a virtual memory box around those two things. So let's talk about what the coins maybe deeply signify. You know that I know you for 12, 13 years now. You love to travel. You have a very hybrid Heinz 57 kind of DNA thing
Yeah.
going on. You know that these things are important to you. So, you know, you create a virtual memory box around those coins. You know, you make a video, show those coins, say, this is why this resonates. This collection resonates because of the following facts about me. And this is why I have an identity with these objects. Now, you create that little memory box. And if you want, I mean, certain people do an actual memory box, a real physical memory box where they're putting a little letter in with the object itself saying, this is why this object has resonance for me. You know, the book, for example, the book, you know, what you do is you would shoot the book, still photos of the book, and then you'd put that into your memory box and you'd say, you know, this is why this book has resonance for me. And, you know, the reason being is it's so interesting as I go through an estate that has been curated like that. It's so much more fulfilling for the heirs. I mean, they see that they can treasure that, they can savor that. And also the other side of it is, Richard, I know that you'll call me a little bit of a weirdo on this, but
No.
things that actually have been touched like that, you know, with quotation marks around the touch, they have a different feel to them. When you actually physically pick them up, when you touch them, you can feel the energy that someone's put into those objects. You know, that book has been with you for how many years?
Well, I got it when I was 21, so it's been with me for 40 years.
Yeah. So if you
Wow.
consider yes, I know, but consider the energy that's in that book. You know, the energy, that part of your life that's in that book. And so because of that, it's worthy of being shown to or told about or narrated or in some way honored. Because, you know, the person, let's say you didn't do anything with it and all of a sudden here it is, you know, in your proceeds when you pass away. Well, it's going to have a tremendous amount of emotional resonance if it's properly narrated. So it has emotional resonance now, but what I'm suggesting is take 5 minutes and tell the story of it.
Yeah.
You know, for its own sake. Just because you loved it so much.
It's interesting. And as you were sharing before we go to break here, as you were sharing, I was going through these coins. I pulled them out of my doctor's bag, as I like to call it. And I have a peso, I have a yen, I have the silver sterling pound from Ireland. I have this. I have a 1964 Kennedy half dollar. By the way, the peso is 1971. It probably doesn't mean a darn thing. And I've got another couple of euros here and so forth. And it's like why I'm keeping. I know why I'm keeping the sterling silver pound from Ireland. I know that, and the euros, because I somehow managed to acquire those on that trip. So that's maintaining that connection. The others, I figured I've got the other stuff from other parts of the country, of the world. I'll just go ahead and I'll take these two.
Well, that's it.
You know?
It's interesting. When I was going through my mom's estate, we were moving her from one nursing home to a higher level of care home. And I was out in the garage, and she had a couple of folders out there that were unmarked. And in one of the folders, it was her favorite cat's collar.
Oh
And
my.
she kept that, for 30 years.
Yeah.
And, the idea of, think about it, Richard, should she have kept with that collar, maybe a photo of the cat and a story about the cat?
Mm,
It wouldn't probably have been tossed away so unceremoniously
yeah.
had we actually known more about her experience. So that's a suggestion as you're going through your spring cleaning, to divide it into a couple of categories. Richard and I've been talking about his own ranch, what he's going to plan to do. I'm suggesting that he divides his inventory taking into the really important stuff in value, and then the small stuff he wants to give away, and how to do that. And I suggested that perhaps it could be through a neighborhood website, or it could be actually just a thrift store drop, for example.
Mhm.
But not to let the small stuff worry he and his wife too much,
Right.
and to focus on the large stuff, because the large stuff teaches you how to research. And the process of research is really enjoyable when you find out where it fits in the grand scheme of life, that object, its
Absolutely.
period, its time, etc.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about the idea of a certain memory box, or a place in your inventory where you literally say on your video, these are my two most important things that I would like the world to know about. And those two things are my coin collection and this dear book that I've carried for 40 years.
Yeah.
And this is why. The book means this to me. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
I carried it for this many years because of what it says.
Yeah.
And what it says to me. And the coins mean this to me. Everybody's got something like that they treasure. And I'm suggesting that now is a good time, as we're coming out of this pandemic, to honor that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to take a break. Let's
Okay.
do that and come back to wrap it up.
Okay.
All right. And this is going to be very short and sweet.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Matter of fact, I even pulled the book out too. And it's what I was kind of flashing up there in the camera. It's this book right here. Yeah. And my friend wrote into the book. She had a little something that's basically, if I can read her writing is beautiful. Dear beloved being, may this book inspire and nurture you in your quest for forever deepening universal attunement. Love, Ramona. Now, what was interesting was, and this is part of the backstory I need to put in there, was that she left this on my doorstep of my apartment and then just took off. And I only saw a woman with red hair flitting away, and I wasn't sure who it was until I picked the book up. And obviously, it was given to me on my birthday. It was really very, very, very sweet. I really. And that's the other reason why I cherish it so much, but also what's in it, the content of the book itself. Okay, let's wrap this up. I've got a live show at 11. and we're doing fine on time because, like I said, this is a quick in and out. Okay. All righty. In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart. I'm talking with my friend and producer, Richard Dugan, about spring cleaning and what he's
Yeah.
doing on the ranch and how to go about it, the kind of stories that he could tell around his stuff as he goes through his inventory making, which is super easy now. We just turn on your phone and do a video.
Exactly.
And the last part of this is, Richard, let's say that you have a really close friend. I know you lost your friend recently, but if you
Yeah.
had a really close friend that you wanted to pass some of these things on to, how do you document that? Well, like I say, you can put this in your will in specific language. You know, I want to give my friend this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You be very specific in the will. But what you can also do is do a pre-recording saying, this is what I'd like you to know about this object that I'm gifting you. And the pre-recording, you can share that now. In the case of a mom that's got 4 kids, that's a really good idea to make a recording like that and say, you know, I've decided to split up, you know, certain things in the household when I go, and this is what I'd like Jerry to have, Susie to, et cetera, et cetera. And she goes through and she narrates that, you know, actually documents it.
Yeah.
Now, why I'm suggesting that is that it takes a lot of emotional turmoil out of the divvying up of an estate when you're gone.
Yeah.
If your wishes are known, then your wishes are known. But if they're not, you know, you've got the situation where I would suggest you put into your language, right in your video that you're doing for your family, if 2 of you do not agree on who's going to get what object, I request and demand that you sell it and divvy up the money.
There you go.
So there, you know, you state that right at the top.
Yeah.
And that's how I would approach spring cleaning. And it can be just as easy as 2 days, a Saturday and a Sunday that you devote to doing this, and just do a record of your house. And by the way, Richard, in our next mudslide or fire or whatever tragedies coming down the pike, it'll really be helpful to you that you've done an inventory.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's been fascinating, and I look forward to getting together with you again.
All right, Richard, thanks.
All right, very good. We're clear. We're good to
Okay.
go. And
So
There we
you'll
go.
clean that up a little for next Friday,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I think next
Okay.
Friday.
Yeah, I'll
I
have this
think
ready for
that's-
next Friday.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Richard. I
You
appreciate your
bet.
time.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I appreciate the program, and we will talk to you a little later. Okay.
Okay, bye.
All right. Bye-bye.